Hello everyone, welcome back to another exciting and inspiring episode of On Location with Zara Durrani. I'm your host Zara Durrani. The show is brought to you by TELUS STORYHIVE. We're here live on location in Yaletown, Vancouver at Dwell Living, this beautiful, beautiful store with amazing furniture and artwork. You must drop by and come take a look. Obviously not today because we're filming here. So right now, joining me is someone I've interviewed a few times, and he's also a dear friend. And, you know, we actually met on my first show, Life and Style with Zara, which was over a decade ago, and I thought it would be great to bring Vince Millard on the show, who is a licensed counselor. He's a life coach, also a motivational speaker, and he helps you anything from stress management, goal settings, if there's anything in your life that is holding you back. I feel like, especially this time of the year with January, New Year around the corner, it's a great time for goal setting and reviewing, is there any course correction that is needed, something you'd like to see differently in your life. So I have with me Vince Millard. Thanks for joining.
Hi, Zara. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I know I have your bio all written right here, but I know you so well, so I'm just going to introduce you. Anything I missed? Anything you want to add?
That's fine. Yep.
Yeah, great. How are you doing? How is everything?
Good. Excellent. Thank you. Yeah. Got back a while back from a nice holiday, so that was really nice in Europe. So it was nice to be back.
It's nice to always step out, get inspired, get like a fresh spin, a fresh take on life, and especially as a life coach and therapist, you're working with all these people. A lot of energy is going out. So I think that by taking trips, like I find, especially for myself, when I have that, seeing my city with a new set of eyes, like after coming back from Paris, like 2 weeks there, when I come back to Vancouver, it just makes me appreciate the mountains and our ocean, the hikes, so much more, even though we love Europe.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I thought I'd bring you on today because, with holidays around the corner, and by the time right now we're live streaming, but we're going to be, the episodes are going to be up for broadcast in December, that it'd be great to talk about mindfulness over the holidays because it can be a very stressful time for, whether your family's in town or whether you don't have family, like just in general. So perhaps we could talk a bit about, coping skills and what we can do to implement a bit more peace in our life as the days have gotten shorter. We're getting less light. In Vancouver, it rains a lot. What can we do? I try to do the things which is in my phone, it's like meditate daily. And I will get 1 or 2 minutes in the week, or lift weights daily or get outdoors. Which I get to do because of having a dog. But I would love to hear some tips from you.
Well, in terms of areas around, if it's towards the holidays, let's say, it might be a good time to maybe think things through in terms of, if you're having quite a bit of invitation or family functions, maybe think carefully about which ones you want to go to, because sometimes it's not necessarily that everyone's going to have a great time. A lot of times it's a time where there's a lot of maybe conflict or issues or unresolved things so it can be a very stressful time for a lot of people, or a lot of expectations on certain people to prepare things, or a lot of stress. So the first step is plan ahead of time to set functions in the area that you can lower the stress factor. So you mentioned, for example, practicing a little bit of mindfulness, maybe a few minutes. But I would suggest rather than a few minutes, maybe at least 10 minutes is the very minimum. Any type of mindfulness, 10 minutes is the very shortest version I would recommend. And then treat yourself sometimes to maybe even 15 or 20 minutes, because it's a form where you're actually stopping, and when you stop and slow down, you're slowing down the world for you. And then all of a sudden you're actually resting the mind and resting the body. So you want to be able to carve that time out and make that the priority versus having to do a lot of what I call sometimes people pleasing. And people pleasing can cause also a lot of stress. So number one is, continue with the routine as much as possible. Like you mentioned, working out. I highly recommend always doing something physical, whether it's walking. And I know the weather sometimes can get really wet in Vancouver, really rainy, but still find something that, if you can go to the gym or do a bit of stretching or yoga, some other form that you're moving the body has to move. and keeping that in what I call optimum or best shape you can. You're going to feel good about yourself inside your body. And it is your car, your vehicle, so might as well take care of it. But around the holidays, it's understandable. There's a little more celebration. There's a little more drinking that's going on, right? But you want to maybe think about ahead of time. Maybe you'll do moderation versus going overboard. So that's another suggestion I would say is think about moderation. So those are a few things I can think of. And, and if you see any potential, what I call stress around relationships, maybe, in-laws or sometimes, parents or siblings, ahead of time, just sort of do a bit of what I call mental rehearsal, preparing that you're going to handle it with patience. You're going to handle it to the best of your ability, sort of accepting the person as they are, but maybe not necessarily accepting their behavior towards you, right? So separating the behavior from the person, and then being patient. Very, very important around that time to be patient, right? So those are a few things I would suggest in terms of some little strategies to make you feel a little more calm, more peaceful over the holidays.
More balanced. Like I feel one of my tricks is it really helps to have a dog. And whether I'm going to see family or friends or some red carpet event, I come in in the beginning, just when people are perhaps doing the bubbles and having a little sippy sip or whatever. I don't drink, and after being there for an hour, maybe 2 hours, I gotta walk my dog. It's like having that internal timeline of how long I'm going to be here for. I'm not gonna stay past a certain time. And saying hello to the folks I want to say hi to, or being open to meeting someone new. But I find that that's something, and sometimes I actually make the French exit, which is I leave without saying goodbye, because if you're trying to leave, and especially if it's a smaller get together, I'm working on so many different projects, including our show and so many different things. So my thing is, I gotta walk my dog, guys. I'm sorry, I gotta go home. Mm-hmm. But really, it creates that firm line, and it's like I went there, I had fun, I socialized, and then I'm leaving when I need to leave. And especially I'll speak for my family, and I don't think they're watching this, but they can have all these from my cousins to my aunts, in terms of what I'm doing for work or what's happening in my personal life. They can all feel like they need to have a say about what's going on in my life. What am I wearing? How is my hair? I prefer your hair curly naturally. Why did you straighten this? Why are you wearing this? Or you lost weight, or you get whatever, all these kinds of things. So I know after dinner, okay, the dinner was great. Oh, it's 8 o'clock. I gotta go home. You guys are in Surrey. I gotta go back downtown. It's gonna take me a bit to get there. But it's taken me time, Vince, to get to this point, because before I would stay there for hours and hours, whether it's with friends or family, and then be in a resentment, be in this resentful mindset. But the thing is, knowing that I actually do hold the power, I can draw this line and be like, I'm so glad that I got to see you guys. Thank you for dinner. I gotta bounce.
Yeah, I think it's important to also do your best to sort of set some boundaries too, because a lot of people don't have those type of boundaries. They just kind of think that they have the okay to just kind of sort of sometimes bamboozle you with some of their own feedback or expectations, or sometimes there might be some sarcasm going on, right?
Yeah.
But you want to be able to be what I call patient, calm, and then knowing when it's time to leave.
Yeah.
Right? And it doesn't mean you have to leave. If you're really having a good time and you're connecting,
you can
stay there,
be fluid.
Exactly, be fluid with it.
And seeing how you feel.
Yeah, depending on the situation, right?
Yeah. One of the things that, as you were talking about mindfulness, I remember when I got to meet you back in the day, and you would share all these guided meditations. My Apple Watch, which I took off now, my Apple Watch actually, will tell me, did you breathe today? Because for me, I know you meditate for so much longer than I do, but the Apple Watch will be like, okay, did you breathe today? And it'll be 1 minute. And to be honest, I think 1 minute can do wonders. When my mind is swirling, my stress is, so it gives me the mindfulness reminder. I mean, this is not a plug for Apple, but for breathing and then mindfulness and I can change those times of like, so it just vibrates a little bit. It'll be like, hey, you haven't done this today. So when my brain is getting a little bit swirly, whether it's the beginning of the day, the mid or end, and sometimes I just turn off the reminder, but I do appreciate that when it's there and I'm like, oh yes, I know I feel so much better afterwards. But it is really nice, like almost better than a nap when you do. You have such a peaceful and calming voice. It's really soothing. I used to listen to Vince's guided meditations. I remember even when I was living in Paris, and you have, you know, anything from like 10, 15 minutes to like 40 minutes. And you create them for people.
Yes.
So whether, you know, someone is struggling with at work, in their personal life, or something they want to manifest, can you tell about the process of creating those guided meditations that you do?
Sure. What I do is I do what I call customized programs, or customized, I put together audios and MP3s, because each person is unique. So it's very hard to have one size fits all. And so as I get to know the person, I'll start having some suggestions that I think would help the person. And as we start working together, sometimes they get into what I call deeper levels of their emotions or what's holding them back. And then based on that, I start scripting particular language and wording that's oftentimes very positive, very easy to connect and relate with that particular imagery. And a lot of times they'll say, oh, suddenly I got in touch with, I've been frozen in time in my inner child, and maybe you can help me with that. And suddenly I'll start creating a specific one around having that frozen child in time with pain and hurt and trauma. Suddenly the ice will begin to melt by listening to the suggestions that begin to thin out what I call the pain, the mental, the emotional pain, or the trauma from the past. And as I listen to it through repetition is the key, the brain begins to respond, or the subconscious or deeper mind. So repetition is very, very important, which is why if you listen to it once every 2 weeks, it won't cut it. But if you listen to it once a day, or at least once every second day, it begins to create what I call momentum, or like a rhythm, or like a very positive frequency for the brain. And when you change the perception inside your thoughts, inside the brain, the chemistry in your body begins to change. You might be familiar with the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton, The Biology of Belief, and he gets into that. So the connection of the mind, body, and the emotional state is very, very important. My philosophy, which is holistic in nature, there's no separation. You want to be able to stop and tune in, how am I feeling in the moment? What's going on with my thoughts? How's my body? What's my body telling me? And then work on that part of you inside, which is, I like to call it your higher self, or your the best version of yourself, your true nature. And daily, take time to connect with that part, because that's the part that's created or associated with what I call a peaceful mind, or more calmer state. And calm is a skill that anybody can learn. And I grew up in a very Sicilian household where it was screaming, yelling, you know, it wasn't bad, it was just that was the nature of the culture. And I appreciate it, but as a result of them being so loud, I became a little more calmer, more peaceful, because it was nature of, it was always drama and screaming, yelling, but very loving, very loving. It was all just the culture.
Passionate, very
passionate, very, you know, so you want to be able to take time for yourself, basically, because it's time with you and your own presence. A lot of people are not sure what to do. You know, during COVID times, people found it really difficult to be by themselves. As a result, it amplified whatever was going on. So all of a sudden, if they had a little bit of a drink, they start drinking too much, or suddenly, because they couldn't go out, they might feel more lonely than usual, all these kind of things. And they were serving as a negative catalyst for a lot of habits that were not serving them, you see? So you are, to a certain degree, what you think and what you feel, so might as well examine carefully, well, who am I? What's going on in my inner world? Not just be distracted by the outer world. I just read some article the other day. It said 1/3 of all Canadians now addicted to their cell phones. And so that's the first thing. It's why I encourage my clients, look, don't go to your phone first thing in the morning, right? Instead of going to your phone or looking at your social media, put it aside and just decide to focus on this part of you that is more peaceful, and more quiet, more still, and spend a few moments with that. And once you've done the calm part, now you get ready into the world. Now you can go in the fast lane and deal with your day, etc. But a lot of people say, well, you know what? If you were in my shoes, I'm studying full time, I got a full-time job. Well, I had all those things too, but I always found the time because I made it a priority. So you see, if you make something a priority, you will find the time, you will carve the time, right? Which brings me now also to, I always encourage my clients, ask them a question, where do you get your energy from? What gives you energy? Because when you wake up in the morning, you always have two things that we all have, the gift of time and the gift of energy. At the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of your life, how did you use those two things? And that's going to determine a lot and the kind of experiences that you're going to be able to have the opportunity to step into. Or okay, sometimes you'll be stepping into a lot of mud. But sometimes you have to go through the mud in order to go to what they call the lotus.
Lotus. Right? I was just thinking that.
So the mud is part of life.
Yeah.
But it's learning how to work it through, how to bounce back up, how to develop what I call the resilient mindset. And that comes again with practice. And that's why I'm a big proponent of, I want to know not just what you're thinking, not what's going on in your life. I want to know, what are you practicing? And the reason I look at that is because you become what you practice. So look carefully, like, what's your practice? You see, not wait till there's like another crisis, there's another scenario. There's always going to be crises, there's always going to be problems. But you can use those problems and challenges, opportunity for growth and for development. And, you know, I was working with someone not recently, and they were using a lot of the stuff in their past to be like type A, which oftentimes happens, and they're super successful in their career, and the money's coming in, but they never stop to question or look at, why am I doing this? What's driving me? And when you find that out, you go, oh, what about me? How about finding time for you now? And you're worthy of the time you spend with you, the self-care. So another, what I call big proponent that I encourage is balance. Strive for balance. And balance means different things to different people. Or what's your definition of success? It means different things to different people. And don't make it just success that you see in the outer world and magazines, because that's very fleeting. You know, fame is very fleeting. But what does it mean for you? What does your heart want?
Yeah.
And it requires a bit of heart work.
A conversation I've been having recently, and, you know, just thinking of something, because I'm working on so many different projects. Like the whole time I was in Paris, I was there for several weeks. No one could tell, but I was sick with fever, burning, shaking, shivering the whole time. I had work to do, but I also know I'm a tough cookie. I know work needs to get done. I was working for different clients. We had all these photo shoots and video stuff and all this content, which I've already been paid for to create in Paris. Now, either I can be like, boo-hoo, I'm sick, and I'm sorry, guys, this is not gonna happen, and here's your money back, or I can, but at the same time, I had to question. I'm like, I've just been like running. So since coming back, which is like a couple of weeks ago, one thing I've been really thinking of is looking at the nervous system. Like, what is the state I'm living in? Whether there's a success or you get a client or a job or something doesn't go well. And this may sound so simple, and I don't know if you do something like this, or maybe we've had conversations about this, but even if I'm going into a situation where may cause me stress, or being around strong personalities or whatnot, I have to remind myself, I'm like, what is my ultimate objective? It's actually at 41 for me now, it's peace. Like, I want to feel at peace, whether I have that client booking, job booking, money coming in, this stress and whatever. And doesn't mean that I stay on the beam, but I really started reviewing, I have to connect with that internal beingness. Like, what is the state? Because, and I think part of, you mentioned inner child, and I would really like to talk about that. And I'm bringing on the show, like later on, some specialists who work with, you know, inner child. And I've been listening a lot to Dr. Gabor Mate these days.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm really fascinated by how our childhood affects us in the present moment, that how some of the programs, beliefs, as you say, that are running, that we are not even conscious of, that we could have certain level of success, but we still feel we need to create chaos or drama in our life just because when we had that growing up. So how does someone overcome that? Because you can be in here and then your subconscious is like, well, I'm more familiar with more chaotic energy. So how do you help? Do you work with that? How do you help people with that?
Well, how I work with it is, for example, you mentioned the inner child, and we're talking about Dr. Gabor Mate and trauma, addictions, pain, right? And everybody has it to a certain degree. So one of the things I do is I never, for example, push someone, let's review your whole past, but if it comes up, then we deal with it. So part of my philosophy is I allow the person to share whatever the experience is, but I'll bring them back into the present moment with their permission. And from the present moment, we start looking at what kind of future you want to create for yourself from the present moment, because the past is really gone, but it's leaking into your present, and oftentimes not in a good way, which is why a lot of times a lot of trauma results in people all of a sudden getting addicted to whether it's alcohol or drugs or relationships that keep falling apart one after the other, because it's unconscious, it's playing itself out, and it was never resolved or healed. So if that comes up, we take a look at, okay, let's bring you back safely through what I call hypnosis. And then from there, have you begin to heal, let go, and oftentimes it might be, for example, forgiving someone or something. And not forgetting, but forgiving, and then coming back again to the present. Now, once you start getting familiar with the present moment, what it feels like, it's an actual feeling, it's a state. Now from there, all of a sudden you realize, okay, now I can face the future with more courage. And oftentimes, like in one particular one I'm working recently, totally petrified of even talking about the future. And he would say, well, if I look at the future, it means my mom will no longer believe me with the sickness that's been going on in my life. So all of a sudden, you know, who would you be without the symptom or the disease or the sickness? And all of a sudden, you start coming out of this trance. So they're all trance states, you know, past, present, and future are states. Unhappiness is a state. Happiness is a state. So part of it is you heal the past if it comes up, and then you start using the subconscious, or what I call hypnotherapy technique or method, to reframe and change all that and create from the present the kind of ideal life, future, health, well-being that you want to step into. So that's the process that I work with.
And I'm sure it can also be very rewarding as someone who is guiding people through when you're working with them, whether it is like addictions or like past trauma. And it's, you know, like I love how, like lately I've just been on this kick of like interview after interview that I will like listen to Dr. Gabriel Mate, and like how he talks about trauma, and he also uses his own personal, you know, talking about his own marriage and how, you know, how he's like, yeah, I can talk about this stuff, but then this is what I was doing, you know, with my wife who was just like ready to leave me. Like I like that, the fact that he's not coming from this place of I have this all figured out and I'm like this guru. Like I just respect him and his work so much. But I've been on this journey myself. You know, I really value individuals like yourself and grateful for the time that we've spent together, and other people that I work with on different areas. And I think like all of us, and I'm so glad we're having these conversations, especially now more than ever, because since COVID and since seeing how it affected everyone's mental health, that we're having these discussions, that more people, and I find like especially men, are coming on my shows and talking about, I see a therapist and I'm working on this and I'm working on my fears and I'm working on my anger. I'm realizing I'm holding this resentment against my mom and this is how it was affecting my relationship with women. Like this is amazing. Like I feel like in, you know, just to see this change, like from 10 years ago to now, that now this, we're having these conversations, like this is how I met you, like my show, The Inspired Life production, Life and Style with Zara, and talking about this just after I'd finished doing my yoga teacher training. I find, because I want to talk about personal experiences, like I've done some of that work, a bit with you and a bit with, you know, someone else I'm working with at the moment. And it's so fascinating that how when doing that how much fear can get triggered, because on a physiological level, that the child that is inside your body who can become so activated, and when you're, you know, sitting with a professional like yourself, and, you know, sometimes like going into that trance, and the amount of fear, like, you know, I remember like one of my current therapists would just be like, it's so fascinating that your entire body changes, your face changes, because it's like the inner child is just like afraid in that moment. And then it's all about like how you coax that. And so I would love to hear, Vince, like, you know, other than like working with individuals and creating these tapes, like what sort of course with everyone it will be different, but what sort of homework do you give to people? Like, you know, do you tell them to like journal, to take baths, to go in nature, to like read books? Like, for example, someone watching this right now and they're like, you know what, I don't know if I'm ready to come and see you quite yet. I'm not sure if I'm ready to go do the work, but tell me what I can start as like a little ABC, like little steps that I can take in that direction. So what would you advise?
Well, usually what I do is each person is different. So for example, we talk about mindfulness. Now, not everybody can take to mindfulness that easy. Mindfulness is a form of meditation, for example, where you watch your thoughts or your breath, it's in the moment, right? Others, for example, might find it a little more challenging to do traditional meditation where you focus on a particular, whether it be an object or your breath or a keyword, right? But usually what I do is my system, and I call it a system, is I encourage them to get the mind and body quiet enough that they can begin to go inside themselves, meaning like from the inside. And then I might add also, for example, journal writing. Now, I have one person right now who's journaling so much that all the processes, the emotions are being triggered in the good way and is having clarity from it. Someone else might not be able to write not even 2 sentences. But I do encourage, for example, writing or journal as a tool. Then I encourage, for example, what are you listening to? And I encourage them to listen to something I'll put together for them if they're open to that.
As in like a tape that you would put together?
Yeah, that's right, an MP3 that I'll put together because a lot of them have been to a lot of traditional, what I call, talk therapy. And originally I was trained as a social counselor, which is, a lot of social work, talk therapy, etc. But I found that working with deeper levels of mind is where my passion lies. Because now you go into a place and a space where you can actually examine those places from a place of safety. You see, because those are deep hidden in the unconscious or subconscious. So part of my task or mission when I work with clients is to help them create a bridge between the conscious and subconscious. A lot of times there isn't that bridge. As a result, there's a lot of inner conflict. So to create that bridge is an ongoing process. And we use a variety of different tools. Hypnotherapy would be one. Journal writing would be another. Encouraging a form of meditation or mindfulness. And also doing something physical. So that's why I like to call it the mind-body spirit connection, or mind-body emotional and spirit, let's say. And that creates a sense of what I call wellness. So I'm a big proponent of focusing emotional wellness, or I like to call it spiritual wellness, right? And what that means to you, right? As you connect with that part of you, the old stuff begins to finally fall away, or I like to call it thin out. Until finally you get to a place where you're now actually feeling, I'm in the moment, I'm in the now. And I look at the future. When I think of the future, it's without so much fear or without so much trigger. It's more only one thing only, a positive, favorable future outcome. And you step into it. And this is what I've guided people into. So all of a sudden they're out of the trance of the past.
Including myself. I have to acknowledge that. I just got this memory, like I was sharing this with Gary, who's one of the store owners, and Julian earlier. I remember like after I finished my first show, like people often ask me, they're like, so you went to film school, broadcasting school, which I would highly recommend people to do. I didn't. I was like, I just graduated high school and then I did everything, right? Like I was like, okay, how hard could it be to produce and direct a show and like man it and like have 20 people working with me? So, I mean, not on this production, but this is like back in the day on Life and Style with Zara. And like, we did these national 30-minute shows, like, with several guests per show. But like afterwards, I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? And I remember it's so fascinating. And I think it's even now and I think it's really important to talk about these things, is like when you are going past this belief that is in the background, which is kind of keeping you stuck and keeping you in this place of not taking action. Because I remember I started seeing you, I was feeling a bit lost. I was like, okay, what am I going to do? What direction am I going to take? As in, I've done this show, we did 12 episodes, national on 4 networks, 30-foot billboards, cover off like Vancouver Sun, like Weekend, like every magazine you could imagine. But then when it was done, it was like, okay, what now? I'm like, and you helped me get into consulting and like media consulting, and that started with like me traveling with clients to Los Angeles and Fashion Week and this and that. This is like 10 years ago. And I was the artist. Like I was like, I'm a creative, I don't really understand the business, which is unbelievable because I'm like now very much on the business side of things, still an artist. And you're like, no, like this. And I remember, Vince, viscerally in my body, the discomfort that I felt, because the growth is uncomfortable. And then the fear that is in your body, especially when it comes to around worthiness, to being like, you know, I can offer my services with the knowledge that I have, which is a lot, to clients, and I can do this work, and I can charge this amount. You know, and I remember you helped me, you know, create these like contracts. I was like, I don't understand business, Vince. I don't know what to do. I think I was like 29 or 28 years old. And from that, you know, like little by little, like even moving to Paris, and over the years, like whenever I've been struggling with, you know, I feel like stuck, and I can feel it can be this emotional but physical thing. How does someone who's watching our show right now, you know, whether they're watching live or, you know, because holidays, family, or even going into the new year, and knowing that I'm fully aware that this is a place that I'm stuck at emotionally. I have a kind of idea of where I want to go. I don't know how to jump to that place. I know for me, like I didn't even know that I could aim for those things, such as like, oh, I can offer my advice to people and get paid for that. And to have this practice. And I remember I got the first client, and I'm in LA, and I'm calling you. I'm like, I don't know how to deal with this situation. And you're like guiding me through these things. It was very much like hand holding. Like, you know, like I'm sure it must feel like amazing to see like the changes in someone like myself or other people. Like, I'm sharing all of this. It's very personal stuff, but I just want people to know that, you know, you can go from a place of like these fears coming up and talking to you, and your voice would be very calm, and you will remind me over and over again, remember who you are, and then listen to this. So for our people right now watching, when they're journaling, when they're doing the mindfulness, when they're doing the workout, like, do you suggest to them, like, do you have like a mantra in your head? How journaling is something that I really love to do, but like people can be like lost. Same with meditation. It's like, okay, there's so many different types of meditation. Which one am I going to do? So for someone watching right now, can you get a bit more specific, especially with those fears that are so strong and can have this hold in our body, that how to like release them through these activities, through these amazing tips that you're offering?
Yeah. Well, a thing I would suggest is everyone's got different what I call tolerance. And so the first step is start small. You know, like I wouldn't expect people to take the kind of risks that I took when I was doing my entrepreneurial journey, because that was for me. And so very important to start what I call determine your ideals. Everyone has certain what I call conscious and unconscious values. A lot of values we actually carry are actually carryovers from our parents. And so a lot of times people are still what I call being driven by those what I call unconscious past values that they got from their parents. And sometimes there's a lot of good, but sometimes also not so good. So you want to take the very best. Then you want to take a look at what is it you want. You're the only one that can figure out, what do I want out of this life? So you start what I like to encourage, write it down. Write down, like, even if it seems sometimes like a far off dream, but write it down. That's the first step. And then make a list of, for example, what kind of situations people can support you. Support is very, very important. I think it takes a lot of times a team to help you move through the journey of life versus all by yourself. So a team is very, very important. And you want to take a look at the people who are supportive. If you have an idea or a dream that's very close to your heart, you may not always want to share it even with your family members sometimes if they're going to be very critical or discouraging, because by the end of the week, that dream will begin to pop, right? Another indicator is take some time out to figure out how can you be of service to others. We're all here to serve. You know, it's you don't have to be kind of salesy, just be yourself. Or when you mentioned Dr. Gabor Mate, you know, he's very vulnerable in opening up his own personal life, and you know, and people look at that and go, I can relate to this person because he's so raw and so real, right? And so very authentic. Now, of course, it doesn't mean you have to be like that with everyone in your life, you see. So you want to choose carefully the environments that you can be vulnerable in that scenario. So number one is be true to yourself and write down what are your hopes, dreams, aspirations. Strive to be of service to others. Start small, and then also start with where you're at.
Yeah.
In other words, if you start looking at, well, look at so and so on social media, don't compare. A lot of social media makes people feel not so good because a lot of people are acting. There's a lot of projecting going on. There's a lot of people pretending, you see. So try lowering the volume and those kind of things and focus on your goal. In other words, I remember a quote by Estée Lauder. She said, I didn't dream for success, I worked for it. Right? So take a look coming back to how are you using your time and energy every single day? How much time are you putting into what you say is your dream, your intention, your goals, right? And then have a plan of action to the best of your ability, and then look around who can support you and think of ways you can help and support them also. And that's where you can create what I call supportive environment or team, or it can be family, it could be one or two close friends, or it could be a coach who holds you accountable, right? But not with guilt, but with what I call encouragement. My style is more encouraging versus, do this, do that.
Which I loved, and it made me feel so comfortable working with you and also opening up. That's why I can sit here and share about my fears and share about the things that come with me, because I don't have it's not something that activates me anymore. It's like the shame or the whatever guilt or stuff has melted away, as you said earlier. And, I do think that I love the fact that, so many podcasts or people are doing interviews and having these conversations about, like 20 years ago, we weren't talking about these things. And it's amazing that, we get to have this opportunity to come here and the podcast or the shows that I listen to, they go deep. Like the Diary of a CEO or Lewis Howes and, all these individuals that are having these beautiful, meaningful conversations. And I found that, all of our sessions could have been recorded, and we did record a few of them. Like I did interview you. And I want to talk a little bit about the journaling. For me, I do like Julia Cameron style, like artist's way, like longhand writing. It's like anything that comes to my mind, like get it out and release it. And then also ideas also come, oh, you can call this person and this. When I do it, it's great. I haven't had a chance to do it today. However, religiously, I do the 5-minute journal. And it's funny you use the word support. Almost on a daily basis, like it asks you to write affirmations. Like, you can write 1 or 2. I write several. I always write, I am supported. I am supported. And it's like, because it's like whether I'm in front of the camera or where I live and stuff. And what are your thoughts of like affirmations? Like, do you work with affirmations or do you suggest your clients to use affirmations?
I work personally with affirmations myself.
Okay.
I've been working with self-affirmations 25 plus years. And what I do is I work with a certain number of affirmations that I work with those ones consistently. So by doing that throughout all the years, they've actually become almost like part of my hardwired system. I can actually feel them becoming part of my nervous system, right? Now, I don't necessarily expect clients to do the same. I'll guide them in a place where, for example, the self-suggestion will be added into the MP3 that I put together, customized for them. And at the end, I'll usually include some very specific, I like to call them therapeutic suggestions, which is a form of affirmations also for them. So it always ends with all these positive things gently bombarding their subconscious mind in a very creative, constructive way.
I love it, bombarding. They're positive.
Versus all this negativity that they've constantly been around their life. There's a lot of negativity in life, a lot of traumas, a lot of pain. That's why the importance of kind of quieting things and beginning to hear yourself, or checking in the moment, how am I feeling this moment? And your feelings are messengers. So pay attention to your feelings, right? And your feelings are, when you allow yourself permission to feel, you're actually allowing yourself to feel, to heal. So that's also part of the healing process.
Say that. Those are big words.
When you allow yourself time to feel, you allow yourself and give yourself permission to begin to heal, all right? And a lot of times people will deny or avoid those feelings because they're uncomfortable or painful. So human nature is such that we run away from pain. But the truth is, you can only overcome fears and pain by gently beginning to face it. And as you do, what happens is the symptom or the fear looks at you and says, uh-oh, they woke up. And all of a sudden the fear begins to dissipate because you no longer fear what you were fearing. So part of it is, I like to call it fear busting. You know, just like the movie Ghost Busting, but identifying your fears with small ones and work your way up. And then you can create what I call intentional, uncomfortableness, but knowing you're doing it intentionally as a form of building your muscles. You see, then you start getting more confidence, natural confidence, not artificial, pretend confidence, trying to impress others. That's a waste of energy. Actual inner confidence is within you. And a lot of what you're sharing is what's happened to you throughout the years and as you're working on yourself. And you mentioned you're drawn to deep things. You're drawn to deep things because a part of you is deep. You're drawn to that part of you that is naturally deep.
Those are the conversations I've been having on my show, like even back in the day. You know, it's like I love adding that fashion and glamour and entertainment, but mixed with spirituality, because I truly believe like you can't have one without the other. You know, like working in entertainment or working in fashion, it can be so easy that your center is moved when you're in that world, or when you're working like long hours, or when you're doing these different red carpets, or I'm at these events and, you know, it's like someone could say something or whatever. I was emceeing this event for Vancouver Export Awards, and it was the 40th anniversary of the World Trade Center in Vancouver. And I had no idea that, you know, that I would know people in the audience like I figured I would. Later that night, I got this message from this girl who I met, and I didn't even remember that I had her number. She's like, I was there. I was feeling uncomfortable and seeing you up there and how confident you were. And she was like, you're this, this, and that. And like just really going in detail. I'm like, really? Wow, you can sense that? And, you know, it's fascinating that I can hold this energy of like, when you were saying to be of service. I heard from like a guest I had on the show. She's a broadcast journalist, Sonia Sanger, and she mentioned that whenever she's on set for like morning news, she imagines opening up her aura and her heart center and enveloping everyone who is watching with her energy, and then everyone who is in that room and welcoming them in. So I kind of use that.
Visualization.
To like welcome them in. So then afterwards, the feedback I got from like the Minister of Trade for State and like everyone, they were just like, you're a great host because you have heart. And that's something you've always said to me.
That's right.
You know, but it's like normally I know when my nerves are kicked in, it's because I'm thinking so much of myself. But when I'm thinking of like, how can I do the best job for my client, for the folks who hired me, and all the individuals who are in this room, and they were like, you were so passionate about what you were talking about. We had no idea you knew so much about Vancouver Board of Trade. And I was like, I don't. But, you know, I want to do the best job because you gave me this opportunity, you know? And just like having you here, like I truly want to share, and I want our audience to know like the impact that you've had on my life.
Thank you.
You know, as a friend, as a mentor, as a coach, and you know, whether in Vancouver, Los Angeles, New York, or Paris, and Morocco, and now we're here back in Vancouver. So I want to talk a little bit about, you were mentioning, you know, during COVID, and we're having these conversations on different TV shows, and you know, people are talking about this very openly now, mental health as well as addictions. And it's like, you know, during the lockdown, during COVID, loneliness and not having many coping mechanisms and skills, like a lot of people turn to, you know, different things, you know, whether it was eating too much or drinking or something else, which, you know, comes from a place of pain and trauma and not having the skills. You work a lot with people, helping them with that. Can you talk to us a bit about that and your work?
Sure. In terms of conversation about addictions,
yes,
and overcoming addictions.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of times, addiction is it's a symptom of not feeling connected, right? Disconnected, right? And a lot of times has to do with some form of pain, again, trauma, anxiety. Anxiety is huge. And then what happens is when the person starts choosing whether it's alcohol or whether it's drugs, it's to numb, to not feel. So, and that's part of the reason it starts becoming more and more repressed, whatever the pain is, right? So I've guided people into overcoming, for example, addiction to drinking. And behind the story on the drinking would be a lot of sadness, a lot of anger, a lot of childhood events that were very traumatic. And so as we worked through the healing process, and one particular person, I think we worked for about a year, every week for a year, eventually it got released. And then all of a sudden the greatest fear was that, would I ever be able to be in a relationship and make it work and have my own family? And now as in a relationship, the beautiful child is there, and I've been watching this beautiful child they have growing beautifully, and he's enjoying, and his business is one of the top in Canada, you see. So all of a sudden you open up these new doorways, and it's totally doable. And at the core is really your self-esteem, your sense of how you allowed the past to affect you, and it's been holding you hostage. So it's guiding you out of that into the place of, like, you step back, almost like slow motion, looking at it almost like a movie. And that's what it was, a movie, a bad movie, but not to let it define you from the present, moving forward now. You see, because a lot of times the part of that brain or subconscious keeps reliving and stuck in that pain, and it's having difficulty letting go. And letting go means beginning to forgive yourself or forgive some others, and then transform the past into what you're learning from it and healing it, and that's it. It's not really good for much anything else, because the past is already gone. You see, so it's like if you go see a bad movie, would you recommend it to others, or would you go see it over and over? Why would you go watch this bad movie?
Something you don't like.
Something you don't like. So part of it is learning how to break of that trance of the past, the trauma of the past, and then come back in the present. And from the present, you're starting to feel more relaxed, more at ease, which is actually your true nature. And then from there, you start having the skills to cope a little better with whatever's coming your way, but not making it like, losing your mind or your body at the end of the day, you see? Or not blaming, but taking responsibility for your life. A lot of times there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of blame. These are the things that I like to call a form of mental emotional virus. And what I call the workout is beginning to clean those things out and come to a place at the end of the day of self-acceptance, learning and healing, and then finally going like, wow, this is a beautiful life, and it's a gift. No matter what's going on, you still see it as a gift. You still say thank you, because it's all about learning.
Even when you're going through something difficult, like I know in my culture they talk about that a lot, is that especially when you're going through difficult times, like, be grateful for that. Because it's like, and for me, when I'm going through it, I'm like, I don't want to be grateful for it. Yet, we say in Arabic, alhamdulillah, which is like, like, thank you, God, for this thing, because it's almost like a place of faith, because this is going to take you, there's going to be the other side. But sometimes when we're in it, like, for example, the lockdown and COVID and everything, it's like, when is this going to end? And the amount of fear and all of that. So everything that you shared is like so spot on and beautiful. You work with a lot of entrepreneurs. What would you say are some of the top topics that you cover when you are helping individuals? Like, what do people come to you mostly for?
Sure. A lot of times it's about not having a balance. So for example, the type A types are so work focused that they suffer in their relationship life. So because they're not balancing and putting the proper time in the relationship, they come home one day and suddenly the relationship or the wife says, you know what, I'm out of here. And they'll come back and they'll say, I don't know what happened. And I'll say, well, what were you doing? And they go, I come home, I read the newspaper, and when you come home, she wants to talk, but I'm tired and I want to read the newspaper. And you didn't pay attention to her for how long, right? And then one day she went on strike and she said, I'm out of here. And now you come in here saying, what did I do wrong? I said, okay, how about this? You put everything into your business. How about in the future, I'll guide you. You'll be able to attract another relationship. I can assure you that if that's where you want to go, I'll guide you through that. And lo and behold, he started changing. Instead of putting everything into his work, realized relationship needs attention also. You don't neglect it. And fast forward, he got married, and then from him, he referred to me another friend of his from relationship challenges, and suddenly I'm doing a lot of relationship work as well. So relationships are very important. They're a huge part of life. And they're part of they have both opportunity for challenging you, but opportunity for also centering you, right? And this morning I was having a conversation with my wife, and she was laughing. She was saying, do you remember when we were dating, we went in this, Stein Valley, and you were very patient when I forgot your bag, If you hadn't been patient, I don't know if I would have been with you. So I was going like, oh, okay, I don't remember that, but she remembers that. And so
that was a pivotal moment.
Right?
That was a test.
Yeah, a test. So I realized, so a lot of times there's these tests in relationships, right? And so relationships are a very important part of life, too. In other words, you want to have that balance between me time, meaning like self-care, but also then you want to be in a relationship where you're sharing and you're connecting and you're paying attention and not neglecting. So coming back, it's about balance, and answers your question. Sometimes they have symptoms of burnout, where they're so overextended that there's nothing left, and suddenly it results in illness, or they have to take time out or several months out. So burnout is another issue that I've guided entrepreneurs in. Other times it might be dealing with emotions like sadness or anger, or basically family pressures, because there might be like second expectations of running like an empire, let's say, right? It's a lot of pressure. So guiding them into how to work those things through, or sometimes sibling rivalries, adult sibling rivalries, resentments, how to navigate that, right? So relationships is a lot of the work that I do in that category as well, right?
That's amazing. I feel like when you were talking about the relationships and like being really work focused, and you're looking over at me, I was like, oh. I feel like especially this last year, I've been so focused on my work. I feel like a lot of my life I have been, and I just kind of put the dating and the romance and all that stuff to the side. So, when we started my last show earlier this year, like the first person we had on the show was a matchmaker, and I love talking about love and romance and dating because, whether you're Canadian or French, or whether you're a scientist or like a stay-at-home mom or whatever, I feel like romance is something, romance and food, like those are the things that, everyone can like talk about and relate to. So let's talk a little bit about perhaps dating, because you do help people in the love arena as well, in the romance arena, whether they're, coupled up or whether they're single and looking for romance. Like, what advice would you give?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is get clear on what it is you want to create or give to a relationship as well as receive, and get clear about that. And then explore what your blocks are, your fears. Oftentimes there's fears, and they're unconscious again. So to give an example, I worked with this one lady a while back, and all the relationships kept breaking up one after the other. So I started exploring that and realized it was a deep fear of commitment. It's at the very core. And
Vince looks at me.
and it's a very common one that is very like unconscious, right?
Yeah.
Once we work that through, all of a sudden it's like she got in touch that, it's not about them. She thought it was about them. It was something going on deep in her subconscious. And we cleared that, or helped clean that up. Once I got cleaned up, now you wake up and you have like a clear page. Now what do you want to write on it? Then she said, I want to be in a relationship and I want to move forward, I want to have my own family one day, right? My own business with the right person. Fast forward now, she's with that person. I lost track of how many kids. They got 2 or 3. And it's working beautifully. It's nice to see all these beautiful children come into the world. And I say beautiful children because I know right now a lot of people are going like, who would want to bring children to this day and age with the way things cost and this and that? Again, more fear. For me, I value family, which is why I have like 3 beautiful adult children and grandchildren, because I don't care what the price is. I would just do whatever it takes to support them, take care of them and pay the price. Because for me, that value is important. Someone else might be, well, maybe it's not worth it. Raising kids today might cost $100,000. If you look at that, you scared yourself before you even got into the game.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Look at your values, look at who you are, and live by those values, stand by them. If you don't stand by that, what I call philosophy of life, or your most important values, then what happens, you're going to follow here, follow there, you're going to get distracted, and you're going to forget that you have a North Star that you should be following, versus every leaf that gets blown this way and blown that way. And so that's why time out by yourself, with yourself, is a form of not just self-care, it's actually hearing that part of you that will guide you like a built-in GPS system to the right situation, the right people, the right relationship. So there is, have faith that out of a planet of, 6 or 8 billion people, there's someone for you. So it's always there. But it's how you get into that space of preparing yourself to step into that relationship, you see?
Yeah.
And so that's part of my, what I call guiding people into what I call a happier relationship life.
Yeah. Okay. We're scheduling a session, Vince. When you were talking, I was like, it's like poetry. You're talking like, those were beautiful words, like, you know, finding your North Star, your GPS. We have like about 10 more minutes to go. The last thing I would like to cover, which is something we talk a lot about in the conversations we've had over the years, in the last decade or so, doesn't matter what part of the world I'd be in, abundance. You know, the new year starting. Like, I feel like, I know we're filming today, it's mid-November, but it's like by the time it's on air and perhaps when people are watching, and, you know, not thinking of the new year when it's like January, but it's like, you know, bringing that energy into like, there is something spectacular. I know it's just another day, but it is another chapter. I understand that that happens on a daily basis because the sun rises, sun sets, you know, every day within the day we can have these new beginnings, but there's something beautiful about a new year starting. How would you suggest, like, you know, what are your any tips that you would like to share with me as well as our audience when it comes to starting a new year?
Sure.
And we've covered holidays, we've covered love life, we've covered, you know, a lot of different topics. I would like to talk about goal setting, but from a very free and abundant space, and you know, going past your own limitations, and like really putting it out there. So perhaps this next year, you can look back and be like, man, I did this, and I'm so proud of myself because I didn't even believe when I wrote this down. And looking, and wow. Because for me, Vince, a year ago, around this time, like, a year ago, around the October long weekend, I called you. I was going through something, and I was in a work scenario, and that I was like, okay, I want to release this. This is not serving. It was great. I'm very grateful for it, but now it's time to like going back to being a creative artist. And then how 2023 has shaped out, I'm kind of blown away. If I do pen to paper and I see I did a play, I've done all this work, 2 TV shows, going to Paris, like it's just been kind of explosive in the best way possible. You know, but it really took like overcoming that, and like, you know, it took kind of working with you and our phone calls, but you helped kind of push me a little bit over the edge. Like, you know, so I want to, I want to talk about like our work center, but work from a place of service, work from a place of like using our full potential.
Yeah. So a couple of things. What I like to do is once around just before the end of the year, I like to send my clients who are open to it a series of questions designed to review the year. Because if you're going to move forward into the kind of year you want to step into or create, very important to review how your year was. Doesn't mean you review what didn't work and all the challenges and the stresses, but what was good about it, and how was it for you? In other words, review the series of questions, and then from there, now you come back to the present moment. Now, a lot of people go, well,
are you able to share some of those questions with us? Because then we can do some journaling and writing and reviewing at home.
Yeah, just send me an email and I'll send you the questions. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no problem.
His little tips and tricks.
Yeah, and then from there now, what happens, a lot of people go, oh, don't set goals because, you know, they don't work. I don't know who created that, but I've been setting goals successfully ever since I can remember. A wise mentor once said, you know, Vince, if you're not making the kind of progress that you like, one of the reasons because your goals are not clearly defined. This is way before people talk about intentions, right? So my balance is between intentions and goals. An intention is something in the present. It's an intention. I intend to, and you fill in the blank, right? But a goal is something where you have a definite date. By this time, I will have, I will do, I will be. And you carve that, right? Just like, for example, I was reading about Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he said every single repetition he was doing, he knew it was taking him to become Mr. Olympic and Mr. Universe. Whereas everyone else was going to the gym just to stretch and feel good, but he had a very definite goal. And stepped into it and later on changed it into acting and then started taking some acting. Everybody laughed at him. So the first step is overcoming your own internal rejection, your fear, etc. And then looking at what's the opportunities in the new year. Now, of course, there's a lot of like fear in the air, all surrounded. You hear now saying, oh, the poor are getting poorer, the rich are getting richer. I saw that yesterday in the news somewhere, right? And it shows this is how much the average person is losing. This is how much the rich are getting richer. Now you look at that, if you work on yourself to the deepest, what I call level, you don't let that disturb you. You focus on, no matter what the economy is doing, you are always going to do okay. Very important, what I call suggestion. And you let it become hardwired. Because if you notice, you look around, there's always problems around. You just haven't thought of creative ways of solving the problems out there. So think not just as a job. Why? 80 to 85% of people are doing jobs they hate. I studied that very deeply in my past and created a couple opportunities around it.
It's so
Helping
funny.
those people, you see?
Yeah, it's so funny. Sorry to cut you off. Like, I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine. God bless her. I know she loves me dearly, but she was like, you know, Zara, most of the people do work they don't like. So at least you have like something salaried, 4 weeks paid vacation and benefits. And I'm like, in my physiological, in my body, I can feel this is not in alignment. You know, when you can just feel, and I remember speaking to you, and I remember walking down Third Beach, walking around the seawall, and the things that you suggested me to do, you know, it's like contacting people, taking those meetings, doing this, doing that. There's certain things that you say to me, and one of the things that you've said to me that I've really taken to heart is create momentum around you, because that momentum will create and bring in people, places, and situations, because there will be this buzz like around you. And I remember, like, even in Paris or here, people often ask me, they're like, oh, well, you had all this success in Paris because you must speak French. And I was like, un petit peu, bonjour, ça va? Like, you know, this is, and they're shocked. They're like, you were just like traveling, working for all these TV shows and Fashion Week and all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I know it is kind of a miracle. But it is so much of like, who you share your dreams with. And then having someone there rooting for you, who's sort of like, you can do this, and like high five.
Yeah, that's right. I like to refer to myself as Chief Encouraging Officer. That's my definition of CEO. I've been CEO of real companies in the past, but didn't do it for me. This is my healing work. This is my calling. So on the topic of a job or career or a calling, I always encourage people, find your calling. When you find your calling, you're finding your passion. And it will never lead you astray. Now, it doesn't mean you have to have or know your passion. If you don't have one, it's okay. You accept that. But search for it, because it's inside of you. If you look inside, a lot of what you're looking for is inside of you, not outside so much. So that's why I always encourage people, go from the inside outside, not letting the outside and the environment be the dictator of your life, which means lowering down a lot of the noise there and getting to what I call your essence, that part of you that's always okay, no matter what you're going through, and only wants the very best for you. Always remember that. But it requires that you take time out and feed it and spend some time in the silence. Silence actually is golden. It will actually speak to you. Take the time out for you, you see? But you have something inside of you. A job, right now people are surviving, it's very tough. A career helps a lot more. But a calling is something that you're drawn or called to. I always encourage people, find out what that is for you.
Well, that's a great place to end our conversation today. I know we can like literally go on for hours, because when I used to come to your office downtown, we would literally spend the whole afternoon just talking. This was fantastic, Vince. Thank you for coming out today. It was so lovely having you and having this conversation. We covered a lot of topics, and you know, we'll share Vince's information. And thank you for tuning in, and wishing you a fantastic holiday season. My pleasure, avec plaisir. And thank you for tuning in and watching, everyone.